Now, Amnesty International says that despite urgent calls to ensure the equal distribution of COVID-19 vaccines in 2021, pharmaceutical companies have failed to rise to the challenge of a once-in-a-century global health and human rights crisis. Instead, Big Pharma monopolized technology, blocked and lobbied against the sharing of intellectual property, charged high prices for vaccines and prioritized supplies to wealthy countries, the rights body has revealed. Sibusiso Khasa, a campaigner from Amnesty International South Africa, joins us now to discuss this further. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time, Sibusiso. Now, your latest assessment paints a very disturbing but somewhat expected picture around vaccine distribution. We've been talking about this a lot. Talk to me, though, about pharmaceuticals' role in what could be deemed a gross human rights violation.
Okay, good afternoon, Mfundo, and also good afternoon to the viewers, and thank you for having us as Amnesty International. Yes, it is quite disturbing that despite several calls from us as Amnesty International and like the bodies like the World Health Organization, still last year we still failed to reach the target that was set by the World Health Organization around reaching 40% of vaccination global, as a global target, is in terms of vaccinating most of the population. At least we had a target of 40%, and yet you had 10 billion doses of the vaccines which were produced by pharmaceutical companies, which include Moderna, Pfizer, your Johnson & Johnson, and others like the Chinese ones in terms of the in terms of Sinopharm, for instance, and yet we still failed to reach the target of 40%. And the reason because of this is some of them, you've already cited them in the intro, the fact that they've monopolized technology, they have high prices and prioritized wealthy countries over low and lower middle income countries. And this now, what it does is that it's more of denying people the right to access to health, for instance, and this they've put profits before people and people's lives. This is despite having about 5.6 million people who have died already from this particular pandemic. It is a human rights catastrophe indeed. So what, as Amnesty International, our consensus is that mainly this is still continuing despite several calls that we've been making, because even last year we did issue such a call when we issued our report, which was titled a double dose of inequality, for instance. This particular report, which says money calls the shots, it's here, it's in the title as to what is happening. And now we are concerned that because even despite those particular calls, you had companies like your Pfizer, your Moderna, and BioNTech, for instance, they had a target, for instance, in terms of the projected revenue. They had a revenue or a projection of about 5.4 billion US dollars, and yet they failed to deliver at least less than they delivered less than 2% of the vaccines to low-income countries. By end of last year, for instance, yes, go ahead, Mfundo.
You know, with this profit agenda, I mean, many have actually been saying that if it wasn't for the profit agenda, we'd actually, as countries, be paying almost 5 times less for these vaccines. It's honestly mind-boggling.
It is indeed, because now when you put profits before people's lives and before human rights, what you are doing is that you are doing injustice. Because now what you're doing is that what you're focusing on is only the wealthier countries, meaning that there are certain lives that are more important than others. And that's not the right approach, because we should be treating everyone equally, and we should be protecting and respecting those particular human rights. And these particular companies, they sort of ignored those particular responsibilities that they had, and in terms of protecting human rights and also fulfilling those obligations. Instead, they just focused on profits and making sure that they prioritize the wealthy countries and ensuring that they monopolize technology, and also in terms of more like blocking access. And if you're looking at these rich nations or wealthier states, what they've done also, they've been hoarding vaccines, for instance. They've been hoarding vaccines for some time now. And also what has been happening is that if you're looking at because we've reached a stage whereby now we are focusing on, some of these particular countries are focusing on booster shots, and this has also now contributed to this particular problem. And now going forward, if we want to reach this particular target, this year's target, which has been set by the World Health Organization, which is 70% of global vaccination, if we want to do so, therefore it means that we have to deal with the same problems that we've been talking about all this time, that these particular countries, they lower their prices, and then they also focus on providing and distributing vaccines to low and lower middle income countries, so that we are all able to have access to the vaccines. And also in terms of intellectual property, they must also be able to share that particular those in terms of sharing intellectual property as well. Yes.
You know, speaking of intellectual property, what is Amnesty International's position on how the World Health Organization has handled this matter? Because South Africa has been pushing for the waiving of patent rights when it comes to vaccine technology. Do you believe they've handled it as satisfactorily as they could have as the WHO?
Well, in terms of the World Health Organization, they've sort of played their role in terms of this particular matter. They've been vocal, just like South Africa and India, when it comes to this particular matter. They've been vocal, and they've established several initiatives to try and encourage these particular companies to contribute in terms of to that technology pool, for instance, or knowledge pool. But what we have seen over the past few months and years, for instance, is that these particular companies have been resisting those particular. They have been resisting and been protesting. They didn't want to contribute to those particular initiatives, or they've sort of tried to contribute when it comes to to a minimum, but they've never fully contributed to those particular initiatives. And even if you are looking at the issue of COVAX, for instance, which was there to try and make sure that there is fair distribution of vaccines, even when you're looking at that particular initiative, which was also set up by the World Health Organization, you can tell that even the contribution of those particular companies wasn't sufficient.